this needs to be resident-centered and human-involved at every single step of the way to make sure that any investment by this industry in AI or other emerging tech had a human face and a human heart at the center of it. And I think that as a guiding principle will always take us to the right place.
Kevin, thanks so much for joining me. We're here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I love getting up here because there's so much policy, but also so many different leaders around business, but specifically in real estate, construction, housing, technology. You've been up here for what, over 20 years now in Capitol Hill?
Yeah, if you can believe it, just over 20 years in the DC bubble.
Yep.
Started out on Capitol Hill, made my way through real estate, starting at the National Association of Realtors, then National Multifamily Housing Council, NMHC, and then now at Real Estate Tech and Transformation Center. So it's been a really eye-opening time, not just in my own life to see the evolution of public policy, but here at NMHC and RETTC, really seeing housing come front and center for policymakers, for the country. It's a really important moment for us. So it's an exciting time to be here in DC.
I love it. Well, thanks for having me in. And
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest things is, my focus is on technology, housing, but also commercial real estate in general. And, you're at the center of that, especially with RETTC and focusing on technology. Why is technology so important? Especially as AI is in every paragraph and every sentence.
That's right.
But why is it important for owners? Why is it important for residents? And then why is it important for legislators on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, I think I'll actually take the last one first. The policymaking community, I think like all of us, are grappling with the role of AI, the role of emerging tech in all of our lives, in broader society, the economy. We're watching major disruption, conversations around job displacement to the need for education and training. In our space more particular, there's a lot of kitchen table conversations happening about affordability, housing supply, housing stability. And for once, we actually see an opportunity to leverage tech in such a positive way to drive better outcomes for renters, drive better development, better supply, better affordability. And this has been a really key moment for NMHC and RETTC to really drive with policymakers that we can address the nation's long-term housing challenges with new tools. We need to lean into and leverage tech as a positive solution. And we've had a lot of significant progress in recent months. I think from a resident experience, AI is clearly driving the customer journey. It's driving the customer and resident experience throughout the life cycle, and that's certainly not going to slow down. What residents want is the easy button of rental living, right? And AI is giving property managers and operators the tools to make that happen. For housing operators, like the other two buckets, very similarly are looking and evaluating how do I wrap their own heads and get the C-suite bought in on the need for investment in these emerging tech. But at the same time, there's a lot of risk that comes along with this opportunity. So looking for ways to use AI smartly to drive down operational costs, address labor challenges, improve efficiency at the property, both from a capital standpoint, but also behind the walls, is something hugely important. And it's really a key moment in our industry's time.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about residents, they have oftentimes better technology than we have.
That's right.
And they have more access to information on the internet. And so right now is a pivotal time where they have more choice than ever before.
That's right.
Going and looking at different properties. But to your point, I think there's several areas we can go. One of which I'm excited about is seeing technology in construction and areas like that. But also there's the software element, but there's also hardware and other dynamics.
Yeah.
As we dive into one hot topic right now, fee transparency.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion at local level across the country, but also in federal level here in Capitol Hill. Tell me more about fee transparency and why it's important.
Yeah, I think, much like the broader economy and industries, we as a collective, rental housing has been marching towards greater fee transparency for the better part of a decade. This is nothing new to our conversations as industry stakeholders. And what we've really done at RETTC and NMHC in partnership has really been to look at the industry's current tools, look where we needed to make improvements, modernizations, and something that can get really wonky, but the multifamily information transaction standards. This has been an initiative led by NMHC for 20 plus years that really served as the digital backbone for a lot of the infrastructure software platforms that many of our owners and operators use. And we saw a need in the past several years to update that data model so that we can accommodate better and clearer pricing for consumers as they're navigating the early stages of their leasing journey to their day-to-day. And so we're really proud of the work we did on fee transparency as an industry. But we also have been partnering with policymakers at all levels of government to really explain how rental pricing works, why it is structured the way it is, why it is an individualized process, and why ultimately a federal approach, as that's currently on the table from the Federal Trade Commission, a federal one-size-all approach is not the smartest move we can do. Ultimately, we think that could backfire and have some unintended consequences, like worsening housing affordability. So we're really pushing policymakers to see the positive efforts of the industry, make sure that any effort we put forward is scalable, recognizes the fragmented nature of our industry, the diverse housing stock we have in this country, and really enables flexibility so that housing providers can work with their residents and their customers to have a clear picture of total housing costs.
I think one of the misconceptions I had is that, especially coming from technology side, is that come in, change things, move fast. In people's lives and in government and in business, it's not always a good thing, especially in a space like real estate, where you make a big change and that can affect tens of millions of people in their homes. Number two, and have very unintended consequences. But number two, it affects all those businesses.
That's right.
And so, as I come to Capitol Hill and your experience in Capitol Hill, managing all of these different changes can be very tough. Can you take us through maybe a little bit of how you think about that, whether it's fee transparency or another topic, of where moving too fast can actually have the wrong consequences for the renters?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot at RETTC about advocacy and action. And what you really see are industry leaders, industry veterans like Julie Smith with Bozzuto, Lori Baker with Camden, truly being the tip of our spear, telling a better, more constructive story. Frankly, in most cases, telling our version of the story for the first time. Not just on fee transparency, but on housing supply, on pricing. Why are we structured the way we are? Why is institutional investment in our space so critical? The pension funds behind our work. So someone like Greg Bates from GID, or Antonio Marquez from Comunidad, being able to come to the table with real world stories can actually inform a policymaker, because it may not always seem it when you see them on cable news, but 9 times out of 10 these guys don't have deep knowledge of how our industry works, how in many cases the economy, different sectors of the economy work. So putting business leaders out there as the tip of the spear to tell our story on each of these issues is critical. And I think more directly in the RETTC space, the tech arena, we are blessed at RETTC to have strong leaders. Christy Simonette with Camden as our first ever chair, James Hamrick with Gables as our vice chair, and then Janine Jovanovic with LeaseLock as our tech vice chair. Each of those bring a depth of experience and ability to change hearts and minds by just being honest about the challenges we're facing at the property level and the way tech can come in and solve challenges, help us serve residents better, improve experience. So I think it's an all hands on deck moment for us, whether you're looking at true bread and butter housing policy, or if you're putting housing policy through a tech prism like we do at RETTC, the ability of this industry to step up and do more and do better is very clear.
It's interesting as you name some of these people, and I think through, they've been in an industry, they travel to the properties, they meet with residents. I'll never forget meeting Toby Bozzuto.
That's right.
And Tom Bozzuto, who wrote a great book.
Amazing.
But they talk about really understanding the challenges residents go through.
That's right.
And one of the great responsibilities they've shared is to build sanctuary, build buildings that will last longer than them.
That's right.
And they know that within the walls there are humans and families who are raising their kids and their grandkids and their best friends. They're meeting their future, partner. And so I thought that was such a big impact on me. From them, but other people like Cindy Clare, Alan King from Berkshire, who love this industry and love meeting with residents. So it's something that I've noticed is, I think oftentimes when you're an outsider, when you actually go to meet the people who are running these businesses and have thousands or tens of thousands of employees working for them.
Yeah, I think there is this broad misperception of the industry that sort of dehumanizes or removes the heart out of the work that these members we've talked about here, but so many others, so many thousands across this country who are actively in the business of building communities, building homes for people to raise families, make memories, make friends, really build what makes us all so proud to be Americans and live in our communities the way we do. I think it's an opportunity for us to realize that no longer can we afford to sit on our hands. We must be active. We must really get out and make sure that it's not just consumer advocates showing up at town halls. We need to show up. We need to have multifamily represented. And I think one key piece of the work we're doing at RETTC, and I'll give you a perfect example, is in the artificial intelligence framework that we put out for the responsible use of AI in rental housing just last year. We had amazing leadership from Whitney Kidd with Price, Brandy Daniel with BH, and then Minna Song from Elise AI. The three of them shepherded a really diverse group of industry stakeholders, housing providers, and tech partners, and arrived at a common set of principles for AI use in our space. And at its heart, and much like we do in everything, is this needs to be resident-centered and human-involved at every single step of the way to make sure that any investment by this industry in AI or other emerging tech had a human face and a human heart at the center of it. And I think that as a guiding principle will always take us to the right place.
I love that. I think that's something that many people don't understand is that every piece of legislation, whether or not it's just for business or appears to be for renters, will have an adverse effect on other markets, whether that's development, a lot with the policy right now. Love to get your thoughts on specifically on the SFR, BTR, and the housing policy. I think they're calling it the 21st century housing.
Yeah.
And what kind of effect that might have from a effect on housing affordability, but number two, also from RETTC standpoint, on the standpoint of technology and being able to because I think so many owners now, as we talked earlier, are trying to put technology in or trying to figure out ways to build more housing. It's a positive sum game.
Yeah, I mean, we've spent the better part of the past month or so really on a full out education campaign with Capitol Hill about build to rent. And this new market segment, which in grand terms has really only popularized over the past decade or so.
Right.
So there's not a lot of significant data out there at this point, but the data that is there shows us that we've added significantly to local housing supply by using build to rent. And at its core, it's just simply a modernization of the multifamily building model, right? It's meeting consumers where they are. It's the family that needs more space, needs potentially a yard, wants better access to different community amenities or schools, who want to live in suburban type single family structures or townhomes, but don't have the ability to put down a down payment on a single family purchase. This is a gateway to affordability. Unfortunately, what we've seen on Capitol Hill is a gross misunderstanding about, as I mentioned before, the role of institutional investment and corporate ownership. This is not a bad thing. This is a desperately needed source of lifeblood for our industry to grow and meet these housing challenges for American families. What we have encountered is that a overwhelmingly positive bill focused on pro-housing agenda has really been derailed by a provision that unfortunately looked to limit the role of institutional investors in what initially was single-family rental only, but because of drafting being not done very carefully, ultimately extended to build to rent. And what that really meant was that anyone who owns over 350 units of build to rent community would be subject to a 7-year disposition clause, meaning they had to sell that asset as a single family home purchase to a buyer within 7 years. That is not how these deals are structured. That is not how the land is zoned. There's a million challenges with this, and we have seen a growing outpouring of bipartisan concern since the Senate passed this language. We've seen champions like Ranking Member Maxine Waters from California come out and say that we need to go to a full conference with the Senate on this bill to make sure we don't disrupt affordability or the supply pipeline. And you have champions like Congressman Mike Flood, the chair of the Housing Subcommittee in the House, very similar, extremely concerned about unintended consequences. So we're hopeful that Congress is ultimately going to get this right, get it to the president's desk, and for the first time in 20 to 30 years, pass bipartisan comprehensive housing package.
I think that's so important because when you try to pass something that is not going to help with supply,
Yeah.
you're going to cause a problem because there's tons of demand out there, and that was what a legislator I remember saying is he said we can touch a lot of laws, we can try to pass a lot of laws, but the one law I can't affect is supply and demand.
That's right.
And there's no greater thing than adding more supply.
Yeah.
Are there some things that you're focused on to help developers? Because I think about it from not only a technology side, but also a real estate side, is that you need investment.
Yeah.
And a lot of these are pension funds. A lot of these are our parents' retirements, our own retirements.
Yeah.
Our police officers, our first responders are invested in these funds.
Yeah.
And they're taking great risk to invest in new housing, to invest in technology that takes years to build.
And I think that is a super important point, that the harder we make it to build or invest in these communities, the easier we make it for this capital to go elsewhere, right? Where multifamily has traditionally been a safe place to put your money to see a decent return, which is why we've always been a harbor for this type of investment. We will see that capital quickly flow out of the housing market. And that is a net positive to no one in this conversation. So I think there's clearly a lot of work we need to do to move the needle on public perception. But I think this campaign that we've been undergoing with Build to Rent has really been an opportunity for us to level set with Congress, that there is no one silver bullet that's going to address the nation's housing challenges. We need an all hands on deck approach. We need all solutions coming to the table.
You hit it on the head. I'll never forget this is probably a couple of years ago when I was in a ranking member's offices. And I remember the person just saying, one of the people from the office just saying, why don't y'all just build more housing?
Yeah.
And I said, gosh, it would be great if that was so easy as that. Or I think it's the same thing as saying, why don't you just build new technology? Why don't you offer more things? And you need people to take those risks. You need people to find that capital. Is there one thing you'd like to leave us with? I appreciate your time, but I know you're very busy schedule. What's one thing today you'd like to leave us with? And then, by the way, it could be a precursor to a future conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing in each of these topics we've discussed today, whether it's really following in the footsteps of industry titans and leaders that we still are blessed to have as the tip of our spear, or the rank and file across communities across this country. The onus is on us to step up and do better and tell our story more forcefully, make sure that the positive work we're doing on a daily basis isn't disrupted, not just by bad public policy, but also a lack of industry cohesion or direction. And I think that's where RETTC is trying to solve the problem, is bring together pro-housing, pro-tech public policy with industry leaders who are willing to step up and support the industry more broadly, make sure that they have peers that they can lean on for operational guidance, pitfalls, all of this, really building a community that's here 365. So whether it's a public policy fight or it's an industry challenge, we together can accomplish great things.
I love it. And I think back to, a strong economy comes back to development, to strong housing, to strong jobs and job creation, but also optimism.
100%.
That there is positivity. But I think another thing is to run a business, no one can disagree who's here, is you need consistency. It's number one word I think about is consistency to see the future.
That's right.
So thank you so much, Kevin, for joining me today. This has been a blast.
Great to see you.
All right.
Great work. Thank you, Chris.
You got it.